One of the most tragic events of American history unfolded 500 miles away from the closest border when more than 900 people took their lives at the same time. This happened in a remote jungle in Guyana where the place was supposed to be a paradise like utopia for these thousands of people. This made everyone wonder how an idea of a united community turns down in flames in the most tragic manner possible. The reason was Jim Jones, a charismatic leader of one of the biggest cults to ever exist. He was born on May 13, 1931 in Crate, Indiana, USA, but his childhood was not the ideal one. His parents were not present around to provide the much-needed love and affection of a family. Jim did not need any attention from his mother, and his father was mostly present in the hospital because he was sick. At a young age, James was impressed by churches and he believed in Pentecostalism. Although he had no formal theological training, but claimed to be divinely inspired. He was becoming very famous for curing any sickness by using psychic powers or telling someone's future after graduating from the Butler University in the 50s and 60s. In 1955, he established a Pentecostal church named Wings of Deliverance that was later going to be remembered as People's Temple. In that era, the US was facing quite some tensions due to racial discrimination. Jim brought forward the idea that all people were equal, regardless of their race, economic background, or status in the society. The thought of being treated fairly appealed to a vast audience that felt deprived of respect and love on a societal level. A huge number of people started joining his church where they felt safer and at peace. Jim wanted to create a utopian society where everyone could live and work together and build a beautiful place. Everything was looking good here, yet for Jim, the situation was going sideways as he was accused for financial fraud, physical mistreatment, and abuse of members and children in its care. By the 1970s, the headquarters was already established in San Francisco. Here, Jim Jones started getting involved in charitable and political activities and was able to build a good connection with the politicians out there. His followers were increasing rapidly at this moment, which made him egoistic of his power. Many even negated the involvement of church in local politics, but the leader didn't seem to mind any of it. He was blinded by the power he was starting to gain. Jones took the decision of establishing an agricultural commune with all his followers in Guyana, where everyone will be living in harmony with nature and each other. Jim promised all his followers that this agricultural commune won't be less than a socialist paradise and those who believed him and wanted to live a peaceful life. According to Jim Jones, a peaceful life meant staying away from US government's oppression and media scrutiny and staying in some hilly area where there can be no connection with the outside world. By the mid-1970s, 500 members had already started working on making that jungle a settlement, and even more of Jones' followers were going to migrate and come to Guyana. In a few days, news started spreading that all the members of People's Temple, including Jones, were diverting all their income to himself and looting and abusing them, resulting in his whole gang image getting ruined in front of the media. At this point, the government had gotten some idea about Jim's illegal activities and sent a team to investigate. After seeing all this, he realized that staying in California, which is why Jim was moving back and forth from Guyana, he was still facing questions for what he was doing at Jonestown. The governments believed that he was running a cult, and this is when he decided to move to Guyana permanently, and here's where things got really bad really quick. The paradise world where people were living in peace was slowly starting to get toxic for everyone. Jim was starting to get paranoid by the ongoing official tension, and that affected the environment of the area too. The residents' passports were snatched, and they were made to sign on documents which ranged from them accepting Jones as their children's father and accepting that they had molested their children, which they clearly did not. They were even getting access to filtered TV shows and films so their political views could be controlled. All this was being done so that the residents of Jonestown can't even think of leaving. African American members were told that if they would leave and go anywhere, then they'll be stuck in the concentration camps of the evil US government. In addition to the mental pressures, where people were working 8 hours a day, it turned into 12 hours after Jim went there. The only source of food in Guyana was the agricultural produce people would create themselves, but the land was not fertile enough to provide that for hundreds of people. Eventually, there were more people and less food, so they were even neglected in case of nutritional value as well. Jonestown was becoming far from the paradise the followers were promised. Even Jim's ideology had changed at this time. The person who believed in love and harmony was getting more and more strict with his workings. If a mistake was made by someone, then a punishment was given. Some even mentioned that the people were locked in a 6x4 by 3 feet box, and sometimes children had to spend the night in a well. Anyone who tried to escape Jonestown was intoxicated with different drugs. Tensions were rising in Guyana and in the outside world. Amidst this chaos, Jim did a fake sniper attack on him and took away guns and machetes from residents. They were given the orders of protecting Jonestown, portraying that the opponents are a threat to the peace of Jonestown. At the same time, addressing the safety of Jonestown, Jones had started warning the members. He had ordered that if they were in danger, then all followers had 4 options, and one of them was a revolutionary suicide. Even rehearsal nights for the event were being conducted with the people and were called White Nights. During these nights, everyone, including the children, was told to line up. As they passed through the line, they were given a small glass of red liquid to drink and were told that the liquid contained poison that could kill them in 45 minutes. And when the time came, everyone turned out to be fine, and Jones used to announce that this was just a test of their faith in him. On the other hand, residents were warned that the time was not far off when it would become necessary for them to die by their own hands. At this point, the relatives of the Jonestown residents started telling their concerns to the US government because they were completely cut off from their relatives who were in the middle of nowhere in Guyana. US government already had a clue that the people were kept against their will and something was definitely not right there. So, they sent a congressman to personally check what was going on. Everything was set up perfectly in front of him. People were dancing and told him that coming there was the best thing that happened to them. Just when he was convinced about all of it, someone sent a call for help with a note to get them out of there. Investigation was again started at Jim Jones. At this time, more unrest was created at the place. Some people took advantage of this situation and successfully escaped into the jungle. Jim was fuming with anger as even more people came forward claiming that they wanted to get out of Jonestown as soon as possible. So, the congressman decided to take them back home. But there was another problem. The plane was not big enough for everyone, so some residents were sent on the present plane and the TV crew members stayed behind to wait for the next one. This is when Jim showed his real side. He sent a whole troop of people with guns on who took the lives of the pilot, congressmen, and many others. Once the news got to the settlement, it was a celebratory moment for Joan and his followers. But on the surface of it, this was pretty concerning as well. A congressman had died in their territory. So this was going to be the end for Jim and Jonestown. At this point, he was paranoid that the governments would be taking strict actions against him and might even ask a death penalty, so he took the most extreme measures. On November 18, 1978, he announced for the White Night and convinced his followers that the authorities were closing in on them and that they would face persecution and death if they were captured. Jones instructed his followers that they were committing an act of protest and solidarity, and many willingly drank the poisoned drink. Some reports suggest that some followers were forced or coerced into consuming the poison. At first, the children were injected with this flavor aid laced with cyanide. Some mothers tried to save their children from this, but Jim just didn't get their place. He still forcefully asked everyone to lay down their infants. At this point, his own wife had realized that this was not right, but Jim was blinded. When 300 children were served with a cyanide-laced drink, whole drums of flavor aid were brought out and it was time for the adults. The people who blindly trusted in the cult willingly took the poison, while others were forced by guards to drink it. Jim did not drink the poison, but died of a gunshot to his head. It is still unclear if he did it himself or ordered someone else to do so. By the end of this chaos, the whole area that was supposed to be a peaceful settlement was covered with more than 900 bodies of people who had faith in one person, and only around 80 people escaped. It's essential to recognize that the massacre was not solely Jim's doing. Several other people who were in higher ranks of the People's Church are also to be blamed. Some reporters suggested that Jim had childhood trauma and his sick mentality was driven from that, but no solid evidence pointed to this. A great idea of creating an equal world for everyone regardless of race or economic background had turned into the worst case for a whole country just because of one wrong step of a single person.